Welcome fellow travelers, Graham here. Today we're in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and we're going to check out the Nanaimo Museum. Let's go and explore. Sitting on the waterfront just meters away from the Nanaimo Museum is a three-story bastion built by the Hudson's Bay Company in 1853. This historic building is Nanaimo's most recognizable landmark and a symbol of the city's history as the third oldest city in British Columbia. The Bastion is a must-see destination for visitors to Nanaimo, and over the years it spawned a plethora of themed merchandise and souvenirs. Located on the east coast of Vancouver Island, Nanaimo is home to a population of about 100,000 people and was once known as the Hub City because of the town's layout, which has streets radiating out from the shoreline like the spokes of a wagon wheel. Another thing that Nanaimo is known for are its bathtub races, which see racers pilot small bathtub-like watercraft through the open waters of the Georgia Strait. Launched at Canada's centennial event in 1967, the bathtub races become an annual tradition, gaining worldwide attention. Of course, the city is also the inspiration for the name of Canada's favorite confection, the Nanaimo Bar. This famous no-bake dessert consists of 3 layers with a wafer, nut, and coconut crumb base, a custard icing middle, and a layer of chocolate ganache on top. Nanaimo is also home to Canada's oldest concert band, the Nanaimo Brass Band. Initially made up of a ragtag group of miners from England and Wales, the band first performed at Victoria Day celebrations in 1873, and since then they've gone on to play for over 150 years, performing at major festivals and events, and even entertaining Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. The area around Nanaimo has a rich history dating back thousands of years, as seen in the traditional First Nations carvings found at nearby Petroglyph Park. But some ancient artifacts, like the Hepburn Stone, remain a mystery. Uncovered in the 1920s, 6 meters below the Earth's surface, experts have yet to unlock the secret of the face carved into the stone or explain how it got so far underground. As a coastal city, Nanaimo also has its share of nautical tales. It briefly operated as a whaling station in the early 1900s, before operations were retrofitted into a plant that turned dogfish into fertilizer. But the coastal waters surrounding Nanaimo were known to be treacherous and claimed its share of victims. This beaver sculpture was salvaged from the wreck of the steam tug Estelle, sank in 1894 due to a boiler explosion, killing all 8 crew members. Another incident happened on January 15, 1913, when the SS Oscar sought refuge in Nanaimo's harbor from a winter storm. The Oscar was transporting a load of explosives to Vancouver, but after a fire broke out, the ship's captain ran the vessel aground and the crew frantically jumped overboard. Fortunately, although the resulting blast caused extensive property damage, no one was killed. The museum houses a collection of other fascinating artifacts from bygone eras. Another interesting tale is that of Henry Wagner, known as the Flying Dutchman, who was part of a gang of train robbers led by Butch Cassidy. After the rest of the gang was arrested, Wagner fled to the Pacific Northwest and continued a life of robbery and smuggling. But his crime spree came to an end in 1913 when Wagner was captured during a shootout with police, but not before he fatally injured a constable with this weapon. Charged with murder, Wagner was executed on August 28, 1913, using this rope in what was Nanaimo's final hanging. This section of the museum looks at the history of Nanaimo's Chinese community, who began to migrate to Canada in the 1860s, finding work here in the local coal mines. By the mid-1880s, Nanaimo's Chinese community was one of the largest in British Columbia, peaking at 1,500 people in 1911. But populations began to decline in the 1920s due to the Chinese Exclusion Act and a downturn in the coal industry, leaving the area to become increasingly derelict until it was destroyed by fire on September 30th, 1960. Moving on, it's always fun to explore the old-fashioned general store, filled with things that would have been considered state-of-the-art at the time. And toys that are a little bit simplistic by today's standards, relying on imagination rather than technology. Coal mining was one of the other major industries in Nanaimo, harvesting ore from the 3 seams located beneath the city. sloping mines were constructed with shafts running up to 500 meters below sea level, and the extracted ore was shipped around the world to Vancouver, Victoria, San Francisco, and as far as Chile, Hawaii, and Alaska. Coal mining was a perilous occupation, and a series of incidents at Nanaimo's coal mines caused them to gain a reputation as being some of the most dangerous in the world. In 1887, a massive methane gas explosion claimed the lives of 153 men in British Columbia's largest mine disaster. Some of the men were killed instantly, but others had just enough time to write farewell messages to their loved ones in the dust that covered their shovels. Just 1 year later, a miner at the No. 5 pit lit the fuse on an improperly set blasting shot. Flames ignited the coal dust in the air and started a chain reaction of explosions, killing 31 miners and 29 Chinese workers. On October 5, 1909, an explosion in the No. 2 mine killed 32 men, 27 of them dying in the initial explosion and another 5 overcome by the toxic gases. Rescuers had difficulty reaching the injured miners because the doors of the mine had been blown out, the rails had been torn up, and the ventilation system was damaged. Another incident occurred in 1915 when a flood ravaged the Pacific Coast Coal Mining Company's South Wellington mine. Incorrect maps caused workers to unknowingly breach the abandoned Southfield mine, triggering a rush of water, with only 81 of 100 men escaping safely. The demand for coal declined in the 1920s as the industry shifted to petroleum, but despite removing over 50 million tons of coal from beneath Nanaimo, extensive coal deposits still remain there today. Another major industry in Nanaimo was logging, with several major sawmills springing up between the 1920s and the 1970s. Instead of moving timber by truck, companies would build logging railways to help haul the logs from the interior of the island out to the mills. However, this practice began to die out after the 1950s when larger and more powerful trucks began replacing the rail lines. And we've just scratched the surface as the Nanaimo Museum is filled with artifacts, each one telling its own story of times gone by. Thanks for exploring the Nanaimo Museum with us. Hope to see you again on our next adventure. Until next time, it's time to exit through the gift shop.